Hey there, so in this video I thought I would share with you what happens to the harvest once we bring it inside. It depends on how late in the day I am harvesting from our garden. If it's late and it's dinner time by the time I get inside, I usually don't put away what we harvested until the next day. Or if it's earlier in the day, then I'm able to get to it and get everything put away. Either way, I always go through all of the things that we pick. I try and rotate it through on our counter. I had already edited this video before, and it wasn't this exact video. I mean, I had adorable footage of my kids wrangling up the chickens, the view from the kitchen when they do that. It was so cute. That's all gone. We had a computer malfunction like a month ago, and I ended up losing a whole bunch of video footage that I can't even begin to tell you about. I was able to find some camera footage from the end of August, early September, that was still on my SD card in my camera, and that is the footage that I have here. So I am missing when I canned up pizza sauce, but I've canned up pizza sauce more than one time this year. I really tried to focus on making sure that I can things up in small, manageable batches rather than waiting until I have several pounds of jalapenos before I do a batch of Cowboy Candy. Instead, I just do a little bit here and there, and it's been very easy, very simple, way less overwhelming. I got more things put up in our pantry this year than I have in previous years because I did everything in smaller batches. This has been an extremely productive tomato year for me. We have several bags of frozen paste tomatoes down in our freezer that I will be processing at some point this winter. So with all of that, my goal here is just to share what we do with our harvest when we bring it into the kitchen. In the summer months, it is extremely basic. So this is going to show the last week of August, first week of September, what we were harvesting and what we were canning. We love frozen green beans, and sometimes I just don't get around to blanching and freezing right away in order to keep them from getting kind of soggy or losing that snap. I just put them in a container, or in this case a Ziploc bag, with a wet paper towel, and I store them in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use them, and they keep a really nice crunch to them. With these tomatoes, I'm going to be freezing them. I wash them well. I remove the stem end and the blossom end if it needs it, dry them, and then put them in a freezer bag to use at a later date. I usually make up an enormous batch of pasta sauce or pizza sauce or whatever it is that we are starting to run low on in the wintertime. Works out very well because I'm in the kitchen a lot more. I'm able to can up more elaborate things than I am able to in the summertime when we're getting so many things in. So I really only can basic stuff in the summertime because we have so much. So I had footage of showing me canning up pizza sauce, but we lost it. So all we have is the following day or days when I'm writing on the labels, checking the seals to make sure they are on there good, then writing what is inside the jars before putting them up into our pantry. Here I am showing what I do with our eggs. So I have several eggs that I'm going to wash off. Only a couple of them sometimes get really yucky. It happens. But for the most part, our chickens lay clean eggs. And if they are really yucky, I have this brush dedicated to scrubbing off any hard mud or poop that might be on them. And I just let them dry on this towel for a little bit. Once they are washed, I leave them on the towel to dry. I try and make sure that I always clean out the sink with everything that we do. And I love that Dawn power wash with hot water. Gets it nice and clean so that when I am rinsing vegetables or jars and things, I know that my sink is clean. I store our jars upside down in our basement. They don't get dusty or anything that way, but I still like to run them through the dishwasher on a basic cycle just to get them nice and clean beforehand. And then I just keep jars on my countertop. They're always there, ready to go. I never really know 100% what I'm going to be canning that day. And in this day, I have all of these slicing tomatoes and some Romas. I decided that I was going to go ahead and can up some salsa and maybe some whole tomatoes, depending on how much of romas I had left over. So I had plenty of jalapenos and bell peppers, tomatoes. I'm pretty sure I had cilantro on hand. I had everything that I needed that I to make a garden salsa recipe. And I did not make it as spicy as I normally do because I have lots of spicy salsa left on our pantry from last year. And I decided that I was just going to make it a little bit more mild. I used less jalapenos. I think the recipe calls for like 8. I used more than that. I probably used double that amount. And it was really, really good. Here I am blanching the tomatoes. My favorite method for blanching is just, bringing a large pot up to boil, making sure that the tomatoes are washed. I remove the stem end and any damaged spots before I blanch them so that I can just quickly peel the skins off after. And when I put them into an ice bath, I use a salad spinner and I just put ice and some water. I make sure that the ice is on the outside of the colander that sits inside the salad spinner. And I'm able to just lift the colander out and the ice stays in the bowl. And the tomatoes are cooled off and everything. I'm able to move them over to the sink and get the skins peeled off. I also want to make sure that I get the water bath canner preheated and get my lids washed. I have this thing where I need to wash everything before I use it. So I have this really gentle baby bottle soap that we still have left over from my youngest. And I like to use that to quickly wash the lids for canning. When I get them out of the box, I just put them in hot water with a little bit of that mild dish soap, let that sit for a little bit, and then I rinse them off and they're good to go. We don't need to boil lids anymore. They stopped doing that a few years back. And here I am going ahead and adding some bottled lemon juice to a couple jars. I didn't know how much room I was going to have. Push the tomatoes down so that the juice covers the top of the tomato, and that's it. It is the easiest, fastest recipe, is just canning whole tomatoes. You don't need water. You don't need anything else other than either citric acid or lemon juice and the tomatoes themselves. But it is kind of messy. So after I get the bubbles out, check the headspace. I make sure to clean off the rims really good before I put the lids on. I try and get these started early because the processing time is kind of long for water bath canning. I've really enjoyed having this electric water bath canner. We have a gas stove in our house, and a lot of times it gets so hot in the kitchen having that running all day with the canner, either our pressure canner or our regular water bath canner. It can get really hot in the kitchen. So having the electric one off to the side frees up room on the stove, and I'm able to have it running all day. So here I'm just dicing up a bunch of tomatoes and adding it to my large measuring bowl. That way I can see how many tomatoes I have and to figure out the ratios of the ingredients that I'm going to need. So I think I ended up with like 12 cups of chopped tomatoes. So then I go ahead and chop up the rest of the ingredients. Once the water bath canner is up to boiling, I set the timer for 1 hour and 25 minutes for processing those whole tomatoes. onions next. Use a garbage bowl, but it's not really a garbage bowl. I just call it that from old school Rachel Ray videos that I used to watch in the early 2000s. She always had a garbage bowl on the table, and I kind of do the same thing, except it's actually a compost bowl. And then I also have the chicken bowl. So I have a couple different bowls depending on what the scraps are of who gets what. All of the interior of the bell peppers goes to the chickens, and any of the parts of the jalapeno that I'm not going to use also goes to them. But I have a whole bunch of them here, and my fancy chopper thingy that is actually dangerous and has been recalled on Amazon a while ago, but I still have it. You have to use it very carefully, so you don't lose a finger. I tap down the top and it dices up the peppers perfectly for me. I really should replace this chopper though, because it is kind of dangerous. I definitely added more hot peppers than the recipe called for because we do like it a little spicy. And then I'm dicing up some of the garlic that we grew this year. And then I'm adding tomato paste. My favorite tomato paste to keep on hand is from Costco. It's the Kirkland organic tomato paste. I keep it on the shelf and I use it so much. I hope to make our own tomato paste eventually, but right now I am not in the place for doing that. Then I add some cumin, and then we're gonna cook this down for a while. I'm gonna let a lot of that water boil off and just let everything cook down together. Now the timer is done for the whole tomatoes that are in the water bath canner. I'm going to turn off the canner, take off the lid, make sure it's pointed away from your face so you don't get a steam bath, and let those sit there. You can let those sit there for 5 minutes. You don't want to immediately move them from the canner to the towel on the countertop. Then I decide, well, I still have all of these jalapenos. I'm just going to can up some Cowboy Candy. So I start dicing up some more garlic and jalapenos to get that process started. And at this point, I'm able to move the tomatoes over to the counter. The water separation is normal. After they've been sitting there for at least a day, I'll shake them up before putting them onto the shelf. Now we are going to add the salsa to the canning jars. one by one, I add them to the water bath canner. And while we wait for that to come back up to a boil, I'm going to start by making some cowboy candy. To help myself not be so overwhelmed, I've decided this year to make sure that I can in smaller batches, because sometimes when I wait till I have like 20 pounds of jalapenos to can up cowboy candy, I either end up with way too many jars or it just gets so overwhelming that I can't keep up with it. So by only just making a small batch of like 4 to 6 jars of everything, canning whole tomatoes a little bit at a time as I get them, it has been way less overwhelming and I am able to keep up with it much easier. Now the salsa will process in the canner for about 20 minutes. And during this time, I will start to do the sticky process of canning up some of the cowboy candy. Now the salsa is done. I'm going to turn the canner off, move the cowboy candy over to the water bath canner, and let everything settle for a few minutes before moving it to the counter. Once the cowboy candy is boiling, then those process for 15 minutes. And that's it. So after those come up to temperature a little bit, I move those to the counter, and those will sit there for about a day, maybe 2. It depends on how much we have going on. When I'm ready to, I'll take the bands off, check the seals, write what's in the jar and the date that I canned it, and then they will go on the pantry until we use them. So that'll do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. We will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.